Imagine being told at 16 years old that there was a leak in your heart valve and that you might not be able to pursue your dreams as a professional athlete. Then imagine having an open heart surgery and being given maybe 4 to 5 years to be able to go on to play that sport of your dream, only to end up having 11 years and then everything falling apart again. Imagine the challenges that you would face by putting your whole heart and all your love and all your ambition and all your mental energy into something that was actually guaranteed to be short-lived and cut short in your life. And then on the other side of that, being thrust into such a deep, dark place of depression, anxiety, panic, not knowing what's next, and not knowing how to dig yourself out and create a new identity and a new sense of purpose. All of those things are exactly what the guest today, Mark O'Brien, has navigated in his journey from being a professional footballer, which for Americans, that's soccer, and going through 2 open heart surgeries, having lots of complications and barriers, and then finding purpose, joy, and healing on the other side of that, all while maintaining a sense of presence and positivity throughout it all. Today's conversation is so inspiring, and whether you've ever gone through a medical or health challenge, or you've just navigated transitions where you've lost your sense of identity and you felt like you didn't know what was next, this story and this journey is going to inspire you. So get cozy. This is going to make you feel like anything is possible and encourage you that even if you're struggling, even if you're feeling lost or overwhelmed or broken, or you don't know what's next, that there is a way that you can reach out for support, that you can work on your mindset, that you can get the help and the healing that you need and still find joy, purpose, passion, and positivity on the other side. So let's dive in, and I hope you enjoyed this story and this journey as much as I enjoyed interviewing Mark. Welcome to Brain Body Speak, the podcast that bridges the worlds of psychology, somatic healing, neuroscience and energetics, as well as holistic health. I'm Joy McCabe, here to help you understand complex topics by breaking them down into straightforward concepts and practical examples so you can understand your brain, your body, your nervous system, and your conscious and subconscious mind. The knowledge you'll find in this show will be your secret weapon as you learn the language of health, happiness, and success. We'll dive deep into unique perspectives on topics like mental and physical health, mindset, trauma healing, and so much more, offering you actionable tools and insights to transform each area of your life. And hey, if you're a business owner or CEO looking for all of these topics specifically catered to entrepreneurship, make sure to check out my other show, The Regulated CEO. Let's dive in. Welcome back to the show, everybody. Today's guest is going to be full of inspiration, and I guarantee you're going to be walking away from this conversation inspired and motivated to show up in life differently. I'm so excited to welcome Mark O'Brien to the show and to hear his powerful story of being an athlete, facing medical challenges, and so many other components that he learned and implemented from facing hardship and losing everything in a sense. So Mark, welcome to the show. I'm so excited to have you, to learn from you and to hear your story. And I can't wait to dive in.
No, I'm glad to be here. It's been a long time coming, but I'm glad that we've made it happen.
I know. You were so sweet and patient with the rescheduling and all the things. And even with this call, I'll just be honest with the audience, my computer shut down and then all my windows and everything got delayed. And I thought, I tend to be someone who, as a professional, sometimes I can get a little impatient. I like things very specific, but you were just so gracious and patient. You're like, it's all good. It's all good. And in your notes, for things for us to talk about, one of the highlights that you have is positivity is a choice. And I just thought, wow, he really lives and breathes that. He's not getting upset with all of this turbulence along the way for this podcast. And I think that speaks to a part of the mentality that you've cultivated through your story and through the things that you've gone through. So I really want to just introduce your story straight out of the gate to the audience and tell them who you are and the pivotal points that brought you to this point of teaching the message and embodying the story that you embody in the way that you do. So the floor is yours to tell us who you are, tell us a little bit about your background, the things that you went through, and then we'll dive a little deeper into the lessons and the challenges that you faced during that and what got you to this other side. So the floor is yours.
Well, thank you for all of that. But no, my name is Mark O'Brien, and obviously I moved away from Dublin when I was 15 years old. I got scouted from a team in England, Derby County, when I was only 15, and I got given the option to sign for them, and I got given a 3-year contract. So as you make the journey away from your family at the age of 15, like that in itself was a massive step to do. But I think I would have moved halfway around the world to try and play football at the time, which obviously soccer in terms of your terminology, but I would have literally just played anywhere. And the season that I had was I started off with the academy, and then you move up to the reserve team, and then you move up to the senior men's team. And within the space of a season, in 1 May, I was playing in a local park, and then the following summer, by the end of that season, I was playing in front of 22,000 people in front of a stadium full of people. Like, it was almost like a dream come true type moment where I never expected it to be as good as it was, and I never expected it to happen so soon. So it was almost like I got everything, and it really submerged that I made the right choice, that football is the sport for me. Like, I didn't want anything else. And then coming back that following season was something where I hit my first bit of adversity, where you had all your medical screenings and your heart scans and different things in your medical checks, and they came across an abnormality with my valve in my heart. So I remember the physio came in and the doctor was there, and they told me that I had a minor leak in my aortic valve, which they told me at the time it was only so minor that the screening only picked it up so vaguely. But it was something that just to keep an eye on. People can live with it throughout their lives. It's not something that should affect you, because they asked me the same symptoms of, do you feel lightheaded? Do you feel nauseous? Do you feel dizzy, breathless? All of the things that come with heart trouble. And I didn't feel a single thing. So I carried on training, and the heart rate monitors that we normally wear during training, they picked up that my heart rate was way higher than everybody else's. My heart rate, I think, was maximum was 230, 232, and the average was 203. So they realized my heart rate was never coming back down when I was resting. So they tried to put 2 and 2 together. Potentially it might have been the heart difficulty. I was working really hard. So they passed on that information to more doctors. So then I had to go and get an MRI screening, which then showed me heart functioning live on the camera. So after I had the scan, this is where we found out that it was getting a lot worse, where we got told from the doctor on a scale of 1 to 10, and 1 being okay and 10 being at its worst, my heart was leaking about a 7 or an 8, which then got the alarm bells ringing of the club itself, and even for myself to think something isn't right. So then they passed that information on to another doctor, and we went to see another specialist. So in this time, I'm not really training as much, and I'm not straining myself. So I'm just telling my family as I go along, like, what the process is. And then we went to see another doctor, who then advised us over the information that he's seen. He advised me on having to go see a surgeon, which he wanted his professional opinion on. But he said, look, you won't need an operation for another 20 or 30 years. So in my mind, at the age of 16, I'm thinking, well, 20 or 30 years, football will be long gone. Everything will be finished. I'll be okay. All I was really focused on was I wanted to play football. So we went to see a surgeon. My family flew over. And I still remember to this day, we were sitting like in a small office, and there was the physio, my mom, my dad, and me. And we were all just sitting there, and the doctor came in, and he put his notes down on his table, and he picked up a model heart in his hand, and he said, Mark, your heart is 3 times the size of what it should be for someone of your age. And if you don't get the operation done this year, you're going to die. So when that got said to me, it was almost like, it felt surreal, like you can't be speaking to me moment. But I remember, because I was 16 and I look at it and say I was really naive, all I asked the question was, can I still play football? Even without thinking about the severity of what he just said. And what he told me was, you probably will never get to play professionally again. You'll be lucky to play down the park with your friends again. So that was the news that probably hurt me the most, because it was the only thing I could ever understand was football. So when he told me that I'd probably never play again, was something where that was the part of the worry that came in. That was where I couldn't really understand. You can't be speaking to me. I've just played in front of 22,000 people and now you're telling me I'll never do it again. That side of it really affected me. So we went through the different procedures that you could have done, which was, you could do a metallic valve, which meant I'd be on blood thinners for the rest of my life, which meant I couldn't play sport. There was an operation where you can swap the two valves around from the lung valve to the aortic valve, which means it's still got to be my tissue, but then later down the line, there's another operation. Or I could get a pigskin valve, which then he said I could then potentially get back playing football, but to the capacity of professional, probably not. So because I heard there's a potential of me playing without even having to think or talk to me parents about it, I said, I want that one. And my family and everything backed me the whole way. The club itself backed me the full way, because after getting that news, the club offered me a new 3.5-year contract, which then gave me the little bit of a boost and a comfort zone to give me the opportunity to get back playing. So I ended up going in, having the operation. It was in October 2009 or 2010. And I had the operation, which took 6.5 hours long. And then I came out of the operating theatre. And then the rehab for it was, they sent me home for 3 months. And then for those 3 months, just spent time with the family, get away from everything. And then I came back into January and I just slowly was building up my fitness along the way. And I look back at it now and say, because I had so much positive reinforcement around me, I never doubted me never playing again. There was never a thought. Only once there was ever a thought that I never thought I'd play. Everybody else around me always pushed me and always kept saying, Mark, if it didn't work today, come on, we'll go again tomorrow. And it was always just slow, steady steps. Yeah. So with all of that, I kept on training. And then I went back to the hospital to do a fitness test, as they called it, to see how my progression was going. And they said I was streets ahead of where I should be. So with me comparing myself to my other teammates, where I was nowhere near their fitness, I didn't then start understanding that I'm on this for myself. So I am fitter than what I should be for the operation, which then made me feel more relaxed than it did comparing myself to my own teammates. So I carried on and I started to then believe in the process that I was doing. And then once I started believing in it more, by the end of that season, I ended up getting back playing in April. So from October till, it was about 7 months of rehab, and I got back playing for the academy team. And then I got back to the senior team by the end of that season in May. And even though there was probably a lack of football for that season, it was probably my biggest lesson that was ever going to teach me, just for my career, but just for my life as well. Because everything that I faced along the way after that and getting to play for Derby County, I had knee operations, but I always went back to the open heart surgery of saying, well, if I can get back from this, I can get back from that. If I can do my cruciate ligament now, I can get back from it. And there was all of that, but I never realized how much of an impact that was going to have on me, because I never understood it. And then as I went on in my career, I got to play for Luton Town. I got to play for a team in Scotland called Motherwell. And I got to play for a team in Newport County, which I still work for to this day. But in all of that, every single season, I had a heart scan to see if my valve was still okay. So even though I got told I'd probably never play again, the doctor said it would be a year to a maximum of 5 years that I'll probably get out of the valve. But in that time, every single season, there would be a heart scan to tell me if I'm an L play next year. So every single year was being played like it was going to be my last. And it's almost like that easy cliche thing that everybody says, live every day like it's going to be your last. Like my career was built on that, because I had to be, because whatever I done that season and I was given the opportunity to do with the valve, I had to try and make the most of it. So there wasn't too many times of trying to get down about things. It was right, but I just have to keep going. And then when I get given the next year after that, it was the same thing again. So every single season was played like it was going to be my last. But again, at 27, it was during COVID at the time. Football season came to an end. And we were all doing our own training regimes, trying to stay fit. And because at that time, nobody really knew what COVID was. And with the lockdown, I remember I was going out cycling each day and I ended up getting a really bad thump in my chest. And I could feel my neck pulsating and my hands were sweaty and something just didn't feel right, but I didn't know what it was. So I carried on still exercising and I phoned our club doctor and I said to him, look, something isn't right in my chest. I need to get something checked. And he said, look, the way the hospitals are at the moment, he said, it's very hard to get an appointment, but I will be able to try and get you in to see a specialist, but it should be okay. Everything should be okay because I only had a scan 6 months previous. So he said, everything should be okay. But he said, we're better off scanning you just to make sure. So a week later, he got me in for a scan down in Cardiff in Wales. And I ended up going into it. And I remember this one where you're in the hospital by yourself. And as I was sitting there on the table, the doctor came in after having me scan. And he came in and he sat down with me and all he said was, Mark, your heart is leaking. And he said, it's leaking very badly. He said, now you're going to need open heart surgery again. And it was in that moment, I burst into tears because I knew this was the end of my career. I ended up sitting there and again, the doctor tried to console me and he tried to tell me everything is going to be okay. There's procedures we can do. And I told him from the age of 16, I always made a promise to myself that I was having one operation from my career, whether that was going to be the year, the maximum of 5 years or the 11 years that I got. It was either going to be that. And then whenever the next operation was going to be, it was going to be retirement and it was going to be for the rest of my life. And now my family knew of that, but not many other people, because I had people questioning me saying, why not just give it a few more years? And I said, you don't understand. It's not something where you can just say, open you up, get it done and you're gone again. I said, it's actually like so mentally draining that even if the operation is very straightforward for a doctor, everything afterwards is so fatigued, draining mentally and physically that I said, I don't want to have to keep repeating it again and again for a football career that is only going to last me to 45 potentially and potentially a bit more, but then that's it. I said I needed to know. So I ended up making the decision there that I was retiring and I broke into tears. I phoned my mum straight away and she flew straight over the next day. So even at the time I was with a partner and she was there with me at the time. And even that in itself was just, it was difficult to get my head around. It didn't seem real because I was 27 when I had to retire. It was almost like I understand everything now. I understand what open heart surgery means. I understand the procedure. I understand the recovery. I understand how long it takes. I understand what can happen if everything goes wrong. That understanding that I didn't have at 16 is what made this so much harder.
Yeah.
I could really grasp the fact of going, this is actually a life-changing thing. This is something that is life or death type situation. So I remember I went to the hospital and I got admitted in. And then when I got admitted in, I remember the doctor saying to me that there was one evening, I remember I was feeling really ill and I was feeling dizzy. I was feeling nauseous. I was feeling breathless. I was feeling everything that I should have felt at 16. And I remember the doctor thought I had an infection in my valve. So they were running all these tests and they weren't able to operate until they knew if it was an infection or not. So in that time of them trying to find out if it was an infection, I remember the doctor came in the evening before my operation and he stood next to my bed and he said, Mark, look, he said, we get the results back tomorrow. If everything is okay, he said, we can operate, but if not, he said, we need to keep a very close eye. And he said, because your valve, he said, is hanging on by a thread. And he said, if that is to break off and circulate your body, he said, and get lodged in your brain, he said, you're dead. And now that, when he told me that, he said, so realistically, he said, the reason you're on this main ward where people are recovering is because he said, we're trying to prevent that. He said, we're trying to prevent that as best as we can. So I remember I obviously didn't sleep at all that evening, but I was on the phone to my mum because nobody's allowed in the hospitals. And I remember we were both speaking, but almost not saying what the doctor has told me. And my mum not telling me what the doctor has just told her. I'm just trying to reassure each other that everything's going to be okay. Look, I'm going to be fine. This happened before. I'll do it again. Not knowing if I was going to wake up the next day. And that was something that, even when I look back at now, it really does affect me because I actually start to understand that seeing if from an outsider's perspective, like what I would have went through from my mom, my dad and everybody around me, that I always tried to be the strong one saying everything's going to be fine. But I actually start feeling the fear that they were probably fearing all the time. And I knew it just wasn't a nice feeling. So the doctor came in the next day. And when he came in, he stood next to me bed and he said, Mark, look, there's no infection. We can operate today. And I've never cried like I've cried before in my life, but it was actually just out of relief. And I didn't understand what it meant by when you hold stress on your shoulders and you build up this pressure that you try and bat off. Like everything just flooded out of me and I just burst into tears and I shook his hand and said, thanks. And then that's where my whole perspective changed, even on life, for the fact of something I was so terrified for, I couldn't wait to have, all because the flip of a perspective, all because of a different way of looking at it, that it wasn't there to hinder me. You were actually saving me life and the operation is here to save me life. And once I started seeing it like that, I couldn't wait to go down and have it. And then in all of that, the operation took 7 hours. I had like the whole rehab and get myself back. But the part that probably what brought everything to light was this time around, I had no reason to get myself back okay again. I had no reason, I had no drive, I had no focus in football to get back fit again. So I had to just sit with the fact of laying in bed. And then I started to understand what depression was, because I never knew what depression was. So I ended up going into a really bad depression, which then with the girl I was with at the time, sadly that came to an end because that all started taking a back seat to so many things. And then I started to have panic attacks where I was phoning ambulances on myself. My mum was here with me and we're phoning an ambulance because my heart rate won't come down and I think I'm having a heart attack or there's something wrong with my valve. Like that all started happening. Never had a panic attack before. Then I started to get told, Mark, you've got PTSD, because I used to lay awake at night too afraid to sleep that I wasn't going to wake up the next morning. So like every spiral that I could have been in, as well as retiring from professional football to all I've ever known, all was on top of me and I never knew how to deal with it. And I remember I started to go back into football, but then I started to hate going back because I couldn't play. So I was holding in the resentment of everything that I was going back for. I can't be out there. Like, why do they get to play and I don't? So I understood the fact you have to go through all of that. I had to go through the whole feeling it to then be able to come around it. And over time, I started to then go into counselling. And then with the counselling, it just allowed me to be comfortable in speaking about it, because I found it so easy to talk about it in a lighter note to make everything and everyone around me feel okay about it. So I found it easy to do that. But when I actually had to speak about it and talk about it in depth, I just couldn't. And I just started crying every single time. So once I ended up getting myself comfortable with being uncomfortable with it, then it just started to be able to understand it a lot more. And then once I got the understanding of it, everything started to change. And like I say, the perspective of so much started to change. Panic attacks started to come to a bit of a stop and then other things. But everything was all wrapped up in the ball of going, I needed to find a purpose again. I needed to find what is it that it's not just football, Mark O'Brien. So then I started to speak to two other men who, one retired from football, one retired from professional golf. And they sat down with me and just would create a group chat with me. And they started to speak to me once a week, twice a week, just to tell me the truth of everything. I could actually relate and resonate with people that have been through it, that they told me at the beginning, look, this isn't going to get any easier, it get harder. But I'd rather hear that than it would be telling me, Mark, if you do mindfulness, everything will be okay. Yeah. I'd rather know, right, it is going to be tough, but I can see what the end goal is going to be. They're doing okay. They're doing well for themselves. They still have had their struggles, but they're okay. So I had an example in front of me. And then that example allowed me to then understand that I was going to be okay. Because the one thing that I always worried about was, I can't live the rest of my life like this. I can't be like this for the rest of my life, worrying, having health anxiety. Like I worried about everything. And then all of a sudden, when I started to let go of the worry, I sat down with those two lads and they spoke to me and basically said to me, how did you feel when you played football? What was you as a footballer? And I said, look, I felt strong, powerful. I was a captain. I got to be a leader. I got to help people and all like that. And they said, okay, so what about yourself now? I said, I've got nothing now. I said, I'm a nobody now. Like I have nothing anymore. And they said, but the one thing that you need to realize is that the only thing that's missing is your confidence, because it's not the job that made you successful. It's you that made the job successful. So all of those traits that you were thinking was football Mark is actually just Mark that made football great for himself. And I never, as I said, never understood it that way. And as I started to see that more, I started to incorporate it more into my life to go, actually, I still can be that. And I built back the confidence to start exercising again, to start going back to football, to start doing all these things. But I started to realize everything was just a small step. And like, I started to realize that once everything started to turn around for the right ways, and it's still to say to this day, I'll still have bad days and I still have great days, but I choose to have or see things differently. And I choose to see the brighter side of stuff. And I choose to see the silver lining, where now when people say, oh, you retired at a young age. And I said, but it's 11 years longer than any hospital ever gave me. So it's a positive on it, even though it's a bad thing. So I always try and look for those silver linings in every single little thing and detail, where I used to go to football and be devastated I didn't exercise. Whereas now I go, before I never got out of bed, now I have. Now I got dressed. Now I had a shower. Now I had breakfast. Now I walked out the door. Now I'm at football. Now I met people. Right. The only thing I didn't do was train. And I was beating myself up over that when I'd done 10 other things that were amazing.
Hey friend, quick interruption to the show to just let you know about something that you can actually get started with right away. You might be listening to this episode and having light bulbs go off, or epiphanies, or having this overwhelming urge of, oh my gosh, this resonates so much and I'm so ready to take a different approach to change, healing, and transformation. And the really good news is that I have an entire suite of super accessible, cost-effective, simple, and easy to access tools on my site that can facilitate you starting your process right now. You don't need to wait. You don't need to be able to commit to a 4-month program that costs thousands of dollars, or any of these really big things that, yes, can be transformational, but aren't always within reach, especially within the moment. So pop over to brainbodyspeak.com, click the shop button, and you'll see an entire selection of simple EFT routines, meditations, self-paced programs, and a full range of mind, body, brain, nervous system, and energy-based tools and modalities to help you with your process right now. Walking through this journey can be tough and daunting and overwhelming, but these tools take minutes a day. You'll learn so much, and you'll have them for the rest of your life to be able to draw upon, to be able to heal, change, transform, and really move the needle on your life. So pop over, check out the suite. We have things as low as $4.99, as in $4.99, less than a cup of coffee, that can start changing your life right now. Back to the show.
Yeah. So then I just start breaking everything down so small. And like I said, I have the appreciation and I'm grateful for the fact of getting to wake up each morning. Like, because that is something that I got told from a doctor, Mark, you might only have 24 hours. You might never wake up in the morning. And that, to me, means more than anything that's ever meant to me before. So once I wake up, I know I can make the choice then of going, actually, I want to see the good in today. I want to see the good side of different things. It mightn't be the perfect scenario, but there's always a silver lining somewhere. So, as you say, going along with everything now, which is why I want to make my life that example to people, to show that if you have the belief, or a small belief, or the right people around you, to not give up on yourself, at some stage, it is only nearly, I'd say 100% of the time, fact that it will turn around for you. It's just about having to see it for yourself first, and then you act on it. But it's a conscious choice, and I'm someone that speaks of it after 5 years of doing it. But I know from the very beginning, if I had said that I'd be speaking like this and talking how I do and opening up about everything, I would have probably laughed at you and said, there's no chance, I'm not even going to leave my bedroom. So I know that it is a possibility for anybody to change their life, because I'm nothing special to the reason why I changed. It's just the fact of I just never gave up on myself. And I know that when people don't give up on themselves, there's many of opportunities. You just have to keep searching the right one for yourself.
Oof. Wow. I don't even know where to dive in, because there were so many points that I was blown away by and that I mapped out here in my notes for us to dive deeper into. But I just want to acknowledge the entirety of everything that you just shared and the magnitude of it, because It's so incredibly powerful. And my own personal story with chronic illness and being an athlete, I think it resonated so deeply with me and the parallels in that of losing yourself and your identity. But, just as a recap and a summary of at 16 years old, the person that you were, a kid essentially, it's so interesting how your story highlights the most important thing was football at that time. But fast forward 11 years, and the perspective shift, the worst thing that could happen to you wasn't about losing football, it was about losing your life. And I think that whether someone's ever faced a medical challenge or lost the ability to do something, that's such a powerful kind of analogy of just the power of our perspective. And whether it's really tangible of football or life and death, or just the way we build things up in our minds, sometimes it takes those really, really contrast moments for us to put things into perspective. And again, I relate to that a lot because I used to be a strength athlete, and a good day was lifting. Could I deadlift 300 pounds? And if I couldn't do that, then I was a loser and I was a failure. The metric was so high. At the height of my chronic illness, being able to lay on my back and move my feet for 5 seconds at a time was a big win. And I think that is, if there's a gift in the challenges of losing your health and losing your abilities and going through chronic and medical challenges, the perspective shift there. I don't think there's many other things in life that put it that much in perspective for us, right? I think that's one of the unique things is you learn to appreciate, like you said, the simplest things of it's not about going and playing football anymore. It's about, am I going to wake up? And if I wake up, then what do I do with this day? So it resonated so much with me personally. And I know a lot of people in my orbit are in the chronic illness space and struggling with that stuff as well. And so I loved how you summed that up. And I think that alone is such a powerful testament for the power of going through these journeys. So just thank you for sharing everything. And wow, what a story. I want to dive into a couple components here. The first one, I guess we'll kind of start with this first. Some light bulbs went off for me when you were talking about you didn't have after the second surgery, you didn't have that same goalpost in front of you like you did when you were 16. And it was, I got to play soccer. I got to football. I got to play football. I've got to go play this. Like that was the thing that was pulling you and motivating you. And even when you were talking before you got to the second surgery part, I wondered if you had a vision for anything past when you wouldn't be able to play. You mentioned that you had said when the second surgery happens, like, I'll be retired. Had you ever at any point thought about what life was like on the other side? Or was it just that tunnel vision of until the next step in this next surgery? I'm curious about that part.
In all fairness, I think it was, whether it's the right thing or not, it was just tunnel vision. I
Yeah.
think because of the circumstance I was in, I gave everything to the year that I had of football. So whatever year that was going to be, I used to always tell, and I used to make my dad more than anybody, he used to say, Mark, but what are you going to do after football? Because you've got a big life ahead of yourself. And I used to say, when it comes,
Yeah.
because there's no point in me worrying about a future that hasn't happened already.
Sure.
So I was already in the mode of taking each year as it came. So whatever I'd done in my career, I used to always be I'd say, optimist of thinking, what happens if I get that one contract that might just sort me out for the rest of my life? And other people would say, what happens if you don't, then what? And I'd say, what if it does? Like, I used to never be someone that would really engage in the fact of thinking, what is life after football? And unfortunately, yeah, I knew it was going to happen at some stage, but I think it just allowed me to enjoy the actual experiences I was having in football at those times. So when I got opportunities to go to Wembley and captain a team and play all these amazing things that I got to do, like, to think to myself, oh, this could all end next year. Like, I didn't have that now, potentially it could have been in the back of my mind. Now, I'll never say that it was ever written off, but when I was in the moment of playing football, nothing else mattered to me because I knew how it could have been taken away from me at 16. So everything in those moments that I had were lived to the best that I could live them. So when that moment came around, which is why I think I knew it was going to happen, but it was inevitable for the fact of once that news hit me, that I think that's why I just burst into tears. I couldn't speak. I remember I just felt numb where you just can't help but cry. Everything you spoke afterwards was just cry, cry. And that was probably a release of so many years of just thinking, this is going to happen one day. And I think I got a little carried away with every single scan I went back for. He used to tell me, Mark, your valve is fine, on you go to the next year. So I got into a routine of always getting good news, that the moment the bad news came, it kind of like rocked me a little bit to think, oh, yeah, I forgot this was going to happen. Now that it's happening, how am I going to deal with it? And how is it going to look? So I think to even answer everything is the fact of I just looked at every single season and gave it me all and never even worried about the fact of what might happen next, because whatever happened next happens and I can't control it. It's out of my hands. I can only really control what I've got ahead of myself. And that is how I lived every single season that I got.
Yeah, yeah. As soon as you started talking, the first thought that came to mind is it's so rare that people are truly in the moment and present in their lives in any capacity. And so as soon as you started sharing that you were tunnel vision, I thought to myself, there's two ways to look at this. One, that you were obsessed and hyper fixated on football, and that was the only thing that mattered. But then the beautiful side of it is everything that you just shared, which is that you were so dropped into experiencing that instead of living 10 years in advance and being like your mind being in the future where you couldn't actually experience. And I know you said the predicted outcome was what, 4 or 5 years for that first surgery? Is that
Yeah.
right? And you got 11? I don't know. I tend to believe that the fact that you were so fully in that and you were living alive, my field with the brain and the nervous system and the way our mind impacts our physiology, to me, I guarantee that that probably had such a positive benefit on that longevity that you had there. Because if you were living in the future, you were already creating that stress and that trauma in your body. And so I think that's a really beautiful thing that you were able to do. Again, a lot of people might have, like your parents, people concerned around you,
Yeah.
like, what's next? What's next? Well, a lot of us get so worried about what's next that life just continues to pass us by and we never experience it. So I thought about the follow-up question of, do you regret that? But I think you answered it of, no, you don't regret that you didn't think of the next steps, right?
Yeah, no, I really don't regret anything. I think the fact is, I think I can always look back. And the one thing that I've always said to a lot of people is, and what I try and get across to a lot of people, even in football still, is just leave a career that you don't have any regrets over. I said, because you're a lot longer retired than you are when you're playing.
True.
So when you are a lot longer retired, it will leave you a lot longer to be able to think, I can't go back and I can't rectify that. And you can never go back to what it was. So while you have it in that moment, give it everything, because you'll, when you come away, you mightn't get to fulfill exactly what I wanted to fulfill, where you want to play in the Premier League, you want to do all these amazing things that you see on the TV. But I still made a career out of my circumstance, and I still made a career out of what I went through. And that to me matters more than thinking, yeah, I've got friends that went on and played really well, but I'm happy for them. They didn't have what I had and I didn't have what they've got. So
Sure.
it's amazing that they got to do that. But I'm still just as happy and as proud as myself to say that I've gone on and done the things that I've done. And as you say, when you can live with not a single regret of thinking, maybe if I gave it one more year, or maybe if I had it, I was always just sitting there thinking, well, whatever happens, happens. I know where I'm fully focused on what I'm doing, and whatever comes of that, I'll leave that down to however everything unfolds. So I always had that approach, which when I look back on, I can see and understand it. Whereas before I just thought, well, Mark, you're just living your dream, you're playing football. But when you look at, you say, the grander scheme of things, I was actually living in a way of thinking, if I live in the here and now, well, then it takes away the stress of what a future can be. It can take away the past of what an anxiety can be. It can literally just make you think, I've got this one game ahead of myself, go play. And then train through the week, I've got this next game ahead of myself, go play. And they were the only ways that I was able to take it. So, like I said, there's not an ounce of a regret in me. I think I just am overall proud of everything. The fact that I was able to stick out longer than 5 years and look at it in a sense of saying 11 years is something that no doctor, I remember after 8 years, the doctor saying to me, we must have gave you a good valve. You're still going strong. And I was like, I'm glad that you did. So there's so much to it that, yeah, like that there would never be a single regret coming from me.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's beautiful. And I always love looking at things from all angles and all sides. It's an innate trait of mine in life and in my professional career as well, is look at stuff from all these different angles and see all these different sides. And I think sometimes, whether it's the psychology world or the healing world or the health world, sometimes people like to look at things as black or white, like that was a good perspective or that was a bad perspective. And I think that this is such a perfect highlight of that because, one, again, sure, maybe you didn't have a plan, but you were present and you experienced it fully. And again, I personally believe that had a massive benefit on your health. But then let's look at maybe the flip side of what happened in that moment where career was over. I mean, you were out riding your bike, chest pump, and then a short period later, it's okay, you might not wake up tomorrow. And also, you knew you had made that decision that after the second surgery, your career was over. On the other side of that, because you didn't have that plan, because you didn't have that pool of, okay, now we go into this next stage. Obviously, things were really dark for a while. You had the panic, the depression, like all of that. So let's talk about maybe the factors that contributed to that and what you were able to, like, what was that like basically? Again, from my lens, it's almost like you had this motivation and I have this limited amount of time to give everything. And then there's this endpoint. And on the other side, because there wasn't a plan or a vision for that future, it was just like, it felt like being dropped off a cliff into this darkness. What did that feel like after over a decade of having that goal and having that motivator? And you were in that space, like, take me into that nothingness and that pain. And I know you mentioned your mentors and the people that were around you were a huge part, but what other things do you feel like helped you start to maybe cast a rope to start pulling yourself out of that dark place for you?
I think when I got to that point, I think, like I say, I got hit with a lot of emotion of crying and thinking it's the end of everything. Like it felt as though my life's over because when you know nothing else other than that sport you were in, you were just thinking, I'm going to be good at nothing else. Nothing else is right for me. This is the only thing for me. So I did get hit with so many things. And because I never understood what depression is, panic attacks, anxieties, and all these things that you usually just think, and even for me, myself, used to be if somebody used to speak of depression, you used to think, just do something that makes you happy. Like, just do something. And I used to be thinking to myself, like, it's not that simple. I started to understand so many things, but once I started to feel like when I was laying in bed, I used to make so many excuses thinking it's the open heart surgery. The reason I'm not getting out of bed, I've just had open heart surgery. I don't want to get out of bed. Like my chest is sore. I can't be bothered getting out of bed. And I remember I had to speak with a cardiac rehab group, which basically give you a schedule to go out walking and they give you a schedule to what you should be doing. And I remember they do a questionnaire with you and they ask you all these questions. And I remember they said, Mark, you are bad in depression. I said, no, I'm not. I said, I've just had open heart surgery. I'm not depressed. Look, I'm fine. And then it's when everything else around me, where everything was always so frustrating, where I'd have people say to me, Mark, come on, get out of bed. No. And I just find myself getting angry and annoyed at everybody. And I was getting annoyed at the world. And then, like I say, I've had people then trying to get in touch with me and talk about it. So again, I'd talk about it like it was a nothing thing. Yeah, I've had open heart surgery and yeah, I had to retire and everything's fine. But it was in those moments of then, I remember when the panic attacks started, and that is what really started to really throw me off, because I never had a panic attack to where your heart can be racing, your hands can be sweaty, your heart rate is up through the roof and you find yourself breathless over no reason. And I was just laying there and my vision is starting to go and I just couldn't understand what's happening. Because I was very black or white and in the moment, I used to think it has to be something physical. Like my mind can't be doing this. I'm not thinking of anything. And every time I'd get admitted into the hospital after calling an ambulance, they would then say, Mark, it's just a panic attack. And I was like, well, what's a panic attack? Someone explain a panic attack to me, because I've never had it before. So again, you get told, Mark, have you tried meditations? Have you tried mindfulness? Have you tried these things? I said, look, in the moment of me feeling this, I'm not going to try and sit there and count to 10. It's quite difficult because my valve is very loud now. I've got a metallic valve in, so you can hear it clicking like a clock. So that was a whole new sensation to have to deal with. Feeling the thump in my chest when my heart rate goes slow to really fast, that's a whole new thing to get used to. So that once it triggered and I was beating fast, I could feel it and I can't slow it down. And I used to just find myself getting so caught up in those moments where I used to think, this can't be me for the rest of my life. And I remember crying to the doctor saying, does this noise go away? Like, do I have to have this for the rest of my life? Like, there was so many things to it. But it was when I went into football and the club doctor, who obviously I've known there for a couple of years, said to me, Mark, have you ever tried counselling? I said, I don't need counselling. Like, I used to think counselling is if there's something seriously wrong.
Yeah.
I said, I don't need counselling. I said, I know what the issue is. It's just I need to get myself fit. I based everything around fitness from what I'd done at 16 was get yourself back fit, everything would be okay. But I'd go in and I'd exercise, and the day later I'd have a panic attack and go, right, I'm not exercising anymore. I found it so easy to eliminate anything that felt as though it was triggering me to have a panic attack. I just say, no, won't do it anymore. And I can be very fixated on going, that won't happen. I won't do that, and I'll just do this. And then if I had a panic attack doing that, then I'll stop doing that and I'll try something else. Like, I could just never think, work with it. Like, it's the panic attack is everything that you're putting yourself under. I used to always be told, Mark, you're being so hard on yourself. And I never understood it. It was because I used to be so hard on myself, thinking, why am I panicking when I'm exercising? Why don't I just exercise? Why don't I go for a walk? And I used to always have that mentality, because I think through football, I was always hard on myself as well, where I always needed or wanted the best for myself because I was on such a time scale. Whereas there's no time scale to this now. This is just me for the rest of my life, but I carried that on because I knew no other way to be.
Yeah.
So once I started the counselling, it was difficult at the start. And I remember the counsellor sat in front of me and she just basically spoke and she said, Mark, tell me like the story behind everything. So I sat and I spoke about, look, my voice is a bit gone off at the moment, but that's only because the ventilator was in me. So then I'm just explaining things rolling off my tongue. And I remember she stopped me halfway through what I was speaking of with the open heart surgery and said, Mark, do you realise what you're speaking about? I said, yeah, I'm telling you me operation. She said, yeah, but you're talking about it so simply. This is just getting a tooth pulled out. Like, this is a normal thing. I said, but it is. I said, I've known it since I'm 16 and having heart screenings every single year. I said, it's normal. I said, yeah, to you it's normal, but realistically to anybody, it's a life-changing thing. And you didn't only just have it once, you've had it twice. But because I had to play it down in sport for so long that if anybody asked me, is everything okay? Yeah, I'm fine. So like, I had to make it that it was okay, that's a normal thing.
Yeah.
So over that time, she said, but Mark, you have to give it its time of day to go understand the severity of what you've gone through and give yourself a break a little bit. Like, stop being so hard on yourself that 4 months ago, you are having open heart surgery and 4 months later, you're saying to yourself, you should be exercising. Give yourself a bit of a pat on the back for you survived it and everything is getting well. And I used to think, no, but that's too simple. Like, my panic attacks isn't because of that. It's too simple. Like, I just couldn't work it out that your mind can make you feel a certain way. And being caught in your mind over something, I always got told that your head will always win. There's no point fighting it because you with your head will always win, which is why I started to understand, okay, speaking about it and trying to rationalize it with somebody else and a different perspective then lets you actually go, oh, I never thought of it like that. And then before you know it, your perspective changes on it. And then other things start to subside from that because you're not sitting battling with yourself going, no, everything's all right. No, you're not all right and everything's great. So I started to understand the benefit of speaking. So the more that I ended up doing that is when things started to slowly get better. And I still always, the health anxiety was something that really held me back for a while because if I ended up getting a cough, if my heart rate went up too high, I remember I started to wear the heart rate monitor every single minute of the day just so I could monitor what it is when I'm resting. What is it when I'm standing up? What is it when I'm walking to the bathroom? What is it when I'm at football? And I got so fixated on thinking I'm in control of this. I started to understand I just want control over, I want everything to be okay because I know that I made the decision that this is for the rest of my life. It has to be okay. Rather than just letting it be what it is and living my life and everything will catch up with me that way, I was trying to control everything into being the best it can possibly can when I was always going to lose that battle because you cannot control what's in there. Unfortunately, I can't open it up and try and mess around with it. It is what it is. I have to live with it. So it's when I started to get the confidence back and the understanding of all of that, then things just slowly started to come around and things slowly got better and I started to have more confidence in myself. Then I thought, do you know what? I'm going to go and do a course and I ended up going for a week to do a course. That in itself started to build me confidence up to talk more openly and to hear other people. And what really always threw me back was the fact of people always sitting there going, wow, you went through all of that. And I said, yeah. And my reaction used to always be, what do you expect me to be sitting with a drip in my arm and sitting here? I'm just after getting out of a hospital bed. I said, these things happen. But over time, I started to just be more relaxed with myself. And as you say, start to understand about what it means to be more present in everything that I do and to be more in the moment of what I do, because the moment is the only thing that I can actually have an influence over. Whatever happens tomorrow will happen tomorrow. Whatever happened 5 years ago with my open heart surgery has been and gone. Like, what I am as for this day now is somebody who can only take control of today and someone who can make those certain choices. And I started to over time realize that for myself, that it is me that's in control through it all. I may not be able to control my valve, but I can control how I see it. I can see it as a comfort thing now that I have that hump in my chest, rather than see it as an inconvenience to me. So like, there's all these things that I start to understand. It does come a lot down to mindset, how all these other things get triggered, things you can let go of and things that you want to look forward to are all sometimes irrelevant to what your present day is. And that present day is the only thing that you really can affect, which then can mold what a future might be and mold what you might have. But once I started to realize that, my life became very simple and a lot less stressful, because now for the fact of thinking, waking up in the morning or going out to football and still being part of that and getting to go out and explore and see retirement as an opportunity to do other avenues of different things that I've never thought of doing before, just because now I see it as, well, I might not be able to play football. And my dad always said to me, what are you going to do now, Mark? And I used to always say, I don't know. I'm not good at anything. I said, well, you never know because you've never tried. So he said, say yes to everything. If you say yes to everything and you try it and you're not good at it, at least you know now. But he said, you cannot possibly say you don't know if you're good at anything if you've never tried it. So once he said that to me, that was another difference of a perspective that I thought, actually, yeah. So then I started to do football commentary, that when I got asked, absolutely loved it. Kept getting asked back. I ended up doing a book. Loved it. Didn't think people would read it, but I thought, why not? If I liked doing it, I got everything out onto paper and other people to read it. Then I started to go out and I've spoken in front of groups of people before just about my life story to try and help other people who have been through similar things. Then all of a sudden that became a lot better. So everything, once I started to get all the little small things in check, what I seen as that big storm that was hanging over me was just slowly broken down bit by bit. But I had to realize it wasn't going to just be a click of the finger and overnight fix. It was going to just be one step after the next. And then whatever feels as though it's dragging me back, even though you might think, oh, I'm back to the start now, you're actually so much further ahead than what you were at the very beginning, because you're still willing to take the steps through anything that you're going through. And that for me stood out so much more, that 5 years now, I feel as though I can look at everything that I went through and be thankful for it, because I have a much better understanding of myself. I have a better understanding of life and other people. I have a better understanding of other people's situations, to why they are how they are, and just find it so much better to be able to open up and talk to people. That gives them the license to open up and speak to me. So I always have that aim now of not judging the situation, where a lot of people have said to me, Mark, I can't tell you what got me down because you had open heart surgery. Like, I didn't have that. I said, well, it's not about what you went through. It's the fact of the feeling that you feel along with it. And that feeling alone is something that everybody can connect with and everybody can talk about. It doesn't have to be the circumstance where what you might have broke a finger and I had open heart surgery. We still felt the same things. So it's all about going back to what that feeling was. And with that, I just see everything so much differently. But I'm so thankful for everything that I went through, more than I ever could be.
Yeah, the perspective part, like I was saying earlier, you don't just get that if you had one surgery and then played football and then had a plan for the next chapter, you know? It's so cliche, but I think it's always worth remembering that the defining characteristics that we have in life, and when we really become kind of the most elevated versions of ourselves, it's going to come from the nastiest, most painful, dark spaces. And again, I firmly believe we shouldn't or we don't need to like overly romanticize. Everything happens for a reason. I found in my own journey, there was a part of me that really pushed back against that because I was so sick for 6 years, really bedbound and housebound. And I got really triggered when people would say that. I was like, yeah, I know I've learned new things and this is shaping me, but we don't have to romanticize it. But at the end of the day, it really does shape us. And if we didn't have those challenges, we would stay this very one-dimensional human. Maybe you as a great footballer, maybe me as a gym owner and as an athlete, but we wouldn't be having this dynamic conversation with all of these different perspectives and these different components. One thing that I thought was interesting, again, it speaks to my world and what I do, is you also had that positivity that you were, okay, I'm going to play football and I'm going to ride this out and I'm going to play as hard and fast as I can for so many years. But that fear that was there was stuffed down. It was like maybe it was there for a moment, but you were so focused on that positive. And the reason I want to dive into this is because in my world, when I work with people, a lot of times they'll say, I didn't experience trauma or I haven't experienced trauma, or they don't know why they maybe have the anxiety, the depression, the panic attacks. And oftentimes it's something that was not felt. It was, I'm really busy and I have to push. And honestly, a lot of athletes and high achievers struggle with that the most because we're really strong and we can push really hard. And we're told, train through the pain, push it down, be positive. Those are positive traits. But again, if you look at it from all angles, what that did for me, and it sounds like an element for you and a lot of people I work with, is we do that so much, but our body's still holding on to it. It's like we
Yes.
think that we're overriding it, but really it's just being deposited. And oftentimes there's a breaking point. For me, it was moving to a new city, closing businesses, and suddenly 3 months later, I couldn't get out of bed. It was like the straw that breaks the camel's back. And I thought, I've lived and breathed health and wellness, and I've done therapy, and I meditate, and I do yoga and all the things. Like, this can't happen to me. But truly, I had overridden the pain, the trauma, the fear, the abuse, like all of these things that I had experienced so many years, and my body was holding it. And so it wasn't until I had to go into that space and heal and feel and process and everything that I started to get better. And it sounds like that's a little bit of the element for you, is you had that positive thing to focus on for that 11 years. But at the end of the day, now your life suddenly changed and you're left to deal with the gravity of, I can now hear my heart beating in my chest and there's all these changes. And what do I want to do? And who am I? I know that the identity part is really big and scary too. When you feel like you build something your entire life. Again, the gym that I built was that. And when I closed that, I was ready to do it. But I had no concept of what it was going to feel like to not have this identity as a gym owner and an athlete. And you feel so naked and vulnerable and it's very scary. Again, it feels like you've just been thrown off a cliff and told to fly. And that's such a very real thing that mindset can't necessarily override. Like, we really do have to slow down and connect to what's driving that and heal it. And it just seems like everything that you just shared was such a perfect example of that. So for the listeners, I wanted to highlight that, again, maybe you don't have the same experience, but oftentimes we do have a breaking point, something that sort of forces us to face off with everything that we've never faced off with before. And when we go there, it's hard, it's tough. But on the other side, we get to put ourselves back together as this very different, much wiser human version of ourselves. And it's beautiful to step into that, to really have that wisdom, to embody that and say, okay, football is not a part of my life, or this isn't a part of my life, but now who do I want to be and how do I want to take this? And that's, I think, the differentiating factor between people that stay in their trauma and that their trauma be their story for the rest of their lives, and those that turn their trauma into something inspiring and empowering and positive to move forward and make an impact on those around them. And it sounds like you absolutely did that. As a final point to kind of wrap the story up, I want to touch on something that it seems like through numerous different spaces in your story, you've had somebody in your life. You mentioned what your dad said to you, what your friends and other people who had retired said to you. It sounds like the people around you, not just therapist, counselor, were such an important part of your being able to change your perspectives. And I want to just maybe speak to that because I'm guessing that's a big part of what motivates you to go be that voice now and give those nuggets of wisdom to those struggling. So how important do you feel like having those peers, those people in your lives that were able to drop a sentence or two that really shifted everything for you? How important was that for you in your journey?
I'd say it was really important. I think having the right people around me. And as I said, when I was 16, it was my family and it was Derby as a club with the physio. And because, like I say, when you're 16 and you get told something like from a doctor, you're never going to play again, you're going to sit and believe it. But when you have people that are willing to work with you and say, Mark, look, when we get you back fit and when we get you playing and when you're back out there, you'll forget about all of this. And when everything was always geared towards not if, it was always just when it's happening. And that in itself led me down to the fact of the people that I've always had around me have always been the right people for me. Like I've still got my same friends that I've had from growing up in Ireland till this day. And that's 40 years of friendship that are all back in Ireland, that once I got home, it's like a reset button for me to be able to go, almost I can be Mark again, because it's like just a complete recharge. And that for me has always just been the most pivotal thing. So through my life, even with teammates that I've had and different people I've come across, always the people who have remained in my life are always the ones that we can always add something to each other's lives. And we can always be the one where, when I was going through all the panic attacks at 27, I had a teammate who I played with at Newport for 3-4 years, and he lived down the street from me. Now I could phone him at 1 o'clock in the morning having a panic attack, and he'd be straight to my door and saying, right, pack a bag, come on, you'll stay with me just to relax yourself. Like that to me was like having the right person around me for that moment. So I always believe that even in my life, people have come and gone, but for those certain moments that they were in my life, I can always rule it back to going, well, they were in this part of my life for this reason, and then they were in this part of my life for that reason, but always in a positive way. There wasn't ever anybody that ever doubted anything that around me. And that is why I think I try and use myself as the example for people, because I know the effects of what it can be when somebody is giving you that little bit of a nudge, that little bit of a come on, you're better than this and you've got more to give. And when you've got that some person like that in your life, you can achieve anything. And I don't ever say that lightly. Like I do believe anybody can achieve anything when you've got that one person that gives you that little bit of a light at the end of a tunnel. And with that light at the end of a tunnel, you can make it for what you want. But it's almost like when you know you've got the support of someone. So even when I was at a football club at the time, the manager didn't like me and I wasn't training and I was playing like with a younger age group. They wanted me gone. But the fitness coach there was somebody who was like, Mark, look, I'll keep you fit. I'll get you fit for when you get your next move. So there was always that next person to always just be the one that, right, I'm going to listen to him. Right? Everything else might be falling apart, but I'll listen to him. He'll do right by me. And when I stay fit, look, it was because of him. So there was always moments that I can always relate it back to that were loads of people to name. And even after the second open heart surgery, there's a lot of people to name. But all of them people all had a certain impact at certain points. For when I was depressed, I had people there to sit and listen. For when I had panic attacks, I had the right person sitting next to me. For when I had the counselling, I had the right counsellor. When I needed to be able to help, when I needed that help from someone else to get me back into football, I had the football club. So that positive reinforcement around me is something that I can honestly say is why I enjoy being that person for somebody else. Why I enjoy so much, because as I said, as much as it is the fact of having that inner belief for myself, I think I needed that as a kickstart from other people to then start seeing it for myself. So the little bits of positivity they put my way was then almost like the little fire starter, the little glint that allowed it to go, yeah, I actually can do this, right? If they believe in me. So then the more I start believing it, then it starts to become the inner belief. And then that inner belief ends up being a blazing fire where like, I know I can take on the world now. And I feel as though I can take on the world. So I'll never forget the people that were around me where I sit here and go, it was all on me. And I can sit back and go, oh, it was amazing. It was almost like, no, I know I needed a lot of help. And I'm not ashamed to say that I needed help. I think that's a bigger strength in people to be able to ask for help than it is to feel as though you need to do it by yourself. And they're the things that I always try and get across so many times, is the fact of when a lot of people always feel themselves as a burden, A lot of people say, I don't want to burden you with my problems. You probably have loads. It's almost, no, it's not being burdened. Someone is always willing to help, because when you would get put in that situation from a friend, you sit there with a friend and want to give the best advice. So why can't somebody else be that person for you? Because again, it's your own self putting yourself down thinking, I'm going to be a burden. So I try and strip all that back from people to go, look, whatever you go through, if you have somebody, it mightn't be me, it mightn't be anybody, but if you have that someone that you can offload stuff to, and that little bit of positive in your life that might just kickstart that little bit that gets that one step in front of the other started, you will then, a snowball effect, just start picking it up for yourself more and more. It doesn't mean you forget about people, but for whatever that person is in your life, whether they come or whether they go, they help you for that particular reason. And that's how I just see things now, is that having that in your life is undeniably probably one of the most critical things you can have. It's just that little bit of somebody just to keep on going. Because with that keep on going, at some stage, and I am the massive believer of going, with that keep on going, you will achieve whatever you want to achieve. But you just need that little bit of, when your mind wants to take over and tell you that you can't do it, that's somebody going, don't listen to that, just keep going. Honestly, I'll just keep on pushing you. And that makes all the difference. So for me and my recovery, and even to be where I'm at today, like, I did need that, but I would never be ashamed to say that I needed help, because I know I needed a lot of it.
Yeah, I fully agree. And there's a lot of parallels in our stories, of course, with different challenges, but just the athlete losing it all, medical challenges. But that's one thing that's very different for us. But it's interesting because it led us to the same conclusion, which, meaning my story, I had just moved to a new city and left my whole community, my spiritual home. I had a really great church that I went to, all my friends. I was closer to my family, and moving to a brand new city where I knew nobody, and then being so chronically sick and struggling for years and years, I knew that was actually one of the biggest things holding me back, is I had no community. And I also had to do the keep up face and put a public persona out there and post content. Nobody knew that I was like deathly sick on my deathbed. Really, for years and years, nobody had any idea. And so I didn't have that community, and I knew it was one of the biggest missing pieces, is nobody's coming to sit with me on the couch. Nobody's coming to give me that pep talk. Nobody's there at all. Like, even the friendships that I'd had from my previous city, I was entering a new era of life and those friendships dissolved. And so my point to that is, that's actually what really led me to create the work and the space that I create now, is because I know when you're struggling with chronic medical conditions and you're going to all these doctors and you're being gaslit and disregarded, the American health community and medical community is really harsh, and it's not a lot of compassion and care. And that takes such a toll. And then for people like me that have invisible illness, nobody can see it. It's not so tangible. You can't
Yeah.
put your finger on it. And so, anyway, my point is, I think community is one of the most important things, whether it's a peer community, whether it's a coach, whether it's friends and family. And unfortunately, for those of us that maybe don't have the friends and family or that closer network, the next best thing is a peer community or a coach, a facilitator that can be that person. Because, like you said, when you're ready to give up, when you're overwhelmed, to have that outside perspective and that encouragement and that, just that guiding light beside you, it's one of the most powerful things. And when you don't have that, I think it makes things so much harder. I mean, for me, for years and years, I think that was the biggest thing that held me back. And I'll never forget the first doctor that actually had the knowledge and the skill set to actually help me. And that one session with him where he validated me and gave me encouragement and said, I know what the problem is and here's the plan. That was like the shift for me. It was like the first time I actually felt like I had that support and that understanding. And so, again, there's a lot of great therapies and tools and modalities out in this world. I love so many of them. But I think that, on a final note, ending, the power of community and how important that is to your mental health, your physical health, your healing, your transition is just so important. And I don't think I really ever highlighted that through another interview. So I'm glad that you had that. And I'm glad that it inspired you to take those additional steps and now be that person. Again, that it inspired me because I didn't have it to be that person. But the more voices and support containers that we can create for people that are struggling, the better off we'll all be. And we all know that today's modern world, we're more disconnected than ever. We're
Hmm.
connected to thousands of people, but we really don't have that community support as much as we need it. And so we have to actively go find those communities of people that are going to support us if we're going through something challenging. And it sounds like you're creating incredible spaces with that. So as we close up, I would love for you to just give a summary of what you're doing in this world, exactly how people can plug in and learn from you. I know you have a book, and I highly encourage people to go read the more in-depth version of your story. But what do you see the next 5 years of your life looking like? Are you being present? Do you have a plan to build anything out? Are you just along for the ride? How can people connect with you, and what's next for you?
It's gonna sound very, I don't have plans for myself, but I am somebody that literally, because I was so drilled for the year to year mentality, it's almost like for whatever comes my way, I agree to and see where it takes me. Because I always believe that whatever comes my way in the space of a day can change tomorrow. So whatever tomorrow might look like, whatever happens in that day could change what the next day looks like. So for me to say in 5 years' time where I'll be, I could literally be anywhere, and I could be in any other country. Like, but from where I'm at right now to be in the position that I'm in, helping in football and helping around the players that I can try and help around. And obviously through my social media of Twitter or Instagram or even LinkedIn itself, just all different avenues. That's where people can just openly reach out to me. And I have no issues in talking to people and getting back to people and all different things like that. These are just little opportunities that come my way. And whatever may come of that is something that I just go along with. As you say, simple as say to go along for the ride is wherever them things take me. But I always try and keep myself as myself now. Like, I don't put on the mask that I found that was so draining to try and say everything's okay and I'm not worrying anymore and I don't have certain anxieties or this never happened to me. It's almost like everything is open now for anybody to know what they need to know or want to know about me, that I am that person where what you see is what you get. So
Yeah.
for the fact of being a positive type person, it's not to say that everything I see is sunshine and rainbows, because it's not. But everything that I see is a choice that I want to make it that way. And I want to see the goodness in things and I want to see the right side of stuff. So I think for me in the next 5 years is going to be carrying on with how I'm carrying on. And then the decisions or opportunities that come my way along that way, whatever happens. And I think that is my way of enjoying what I'm doing at the moment. Because as I said, that whole being grateful for being able to wake up, I actually really do live by that every single day, for the fact of thinking whatever this day may hold was meant for me. So whatever tomorrow might bring can only be affected by the day that I've got today. And that is how I see things. And it's not steered me wrong yet. So I don't think why change something if it's not broken. So I carry on with that. And through social media on Instagram is where people can reach out to me probably more. And my book that's online, Game of Two Hearts, is just something that anybody can tap into through Amazon and different things. Or if they needed a copy, they could message me and I could get one sent out. So yeah, there's just loads of different ways. But for the sake of 5 years' time, who knows?
Who knows? We'll have to have a follow-up in 5 years, right?
Exactly. That can be the 5 year plan.
Yeah. Well, of course, in the show notes, we'll have the link to your book and your socials and everything so that people can connect and follow you and continue to be inspired by you. I was definitely inspired. As you go through your own journey, for me, sometimes my health was so all consuming, and it's so helpful for me sometimes to just hear other people's stories and put things in perspective for me, because when you struggle with chronic health stuff, you do have to be so hyper focused on yourself and your own world, but your world then gets smaller and smaller, and you by default, by necessity, are very self-focused. Like for me, my
Yeah.
health is still very fragile. And it's so invigorating for me to just hear other people's stories and to not only not feel alone, but just remember, oh yeah, there's so many people that have been through so much. And if they can maintain a positive mindset and they can grow from this, like, don't forget that's a part of this journey too. So I really appreciate and value you sharing your journey and your story. It was so deeply resonate with me. And I know a lot of people listening will resonate with different parts of it as well. So thank you so much for sharing your wisdom. Again, we'll drop all of the links and everything for people to connect with you below. And I do have one final question because I was so eager to get started that I forgot this at the very beginning. I have a signature question. I generally use it as an icebreaker. But the question is, and you can't say anything related to like your career or your story, what we just talked about. But what is the most interesting thing about you?
Oh, the most interesting thing about me, I would say that I enjoy to sing. I'm not saying that I'm a great singer, but I enjoyed to sing. And I used to skateboard when I was younger.
I love it. I love it. You know, a lot of people have like a musical background or like a theater background, and you would never know that about them unless you ask them this question. So I love that. The other signature question, the sign off closing question that I have, if there's one belief or kind of action behavior in the entirety of the planet that you feel like if it could completely be eradicated would change the world, what do you think that would be?
If there's one act that could be eradicated,
Act, belief, thought, pattern, something that's just
I'd say
active.
I'd say probably the belief of judgment, like judging other people or comparing yourself. I think when you live a life where you don't compare to others, where you admire other people or you watch other people and you're happy for them, like I think that mindset alone would make everything like they almost see the world as everyone's in it together. Like we're not against each other. Like that for itself is something where I think instead of judgment, you almost want to be admirable of everybody. So
Wow.
that for me would be something that I think would make everything a much better place where you can just sit and admire others rather than ridicule.
Gosh, that's such a good point. Because if we think about that comparison and judgment, all of a sudden we'd all be on the same team. Imagine what that would do for the world. That was an awesome
Exactly.
answer. I love that. I love that. That one's definitely a new one and probably one of my favorites. So I appreciate that perspective. Well, thank you, Mark, so much for your time, for your knowledge, sharing your story. And we'll be doing this in 5 years to see what you
Exactly. 5 more years.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. Make sure to check everything and the links below, and we will see you next time. Thank you so much for tuning in to Brain Body Speak. If you found today's episode valuable, be sure to subscribe, share it with a friend, and please, please consider leaving a review so that more people can find the show and benefit from this content. It means the world to me. I read every single one of them, and it really encourages me to keep moving forward with this mission and this podcast. Also, tag me on Instagram at Brain Body Speak and let me know what resonated with you specifically about this episode, and you'll be entered into my monthly giveaway of a free $500 value Brain Body Reboot course. To take this journey further, visit brainbodyspeak.com for free resources and to see our complete suite of self-paced programs. If you're ready to start nourishing your brain and body today, snag something from my premium supplement line by visiting zeninabottle.biz. Remember, 300 Zens, our magnesium product, is my absolute fave and my #1 recommendation for people to get started. Until next time, remember, your transformation begins with your brain, your body, and your nervous system. And I hope you found value from this show that you can put into action today. Love and Zen. Until next time.